we have to wrap up fairly soon. But I think the last question for the panel is really following on from what we've been talking about. What's the roadmap for getting people into high-quality sound? So we are here where we are, which is not an awful lot of people understand the benefits and the amazing experience it can give outside the sort of closeted environment of the hi-fi ecosphere. So how do we get from here to there? How do we get to a place where people really appreciate great sound and are able to get easy access to it, for it to be recorded and then for it to be distributed? Any thoughts on that? Do you want to?
I think I kind of already gave my opinion on that, but yeah, just to summarize: experiences, getting people in front of it, prices of the streaming services, and the equipment that's needed to appreciate that. And above that, I guess the financial incentives for the streaming platforms to actually provide that, which is kind of a bit of a vicious circle, virtuous circle. Yeah.
Okay. Enno? Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge is probably access to the kind of equipment necessary to reproduce the kind of resolution we're talking about. We were talking earlier actually about the delta between playing back a Redbook file on some very cheap consumer electronics device versus an entry level. It's not something that we in this room would consider to be audiophile type product. That delta is tremendous, perhaps much bigger than the delta between Redbook and a high-res PCM file, let's say, on a high-end piece of equipment. So getting people over that initial hump is really, I think, the challenge. And it's difficult because there's not much channel for high-performance audio. I think, interestingly, in the last few years, from my point of view, is that things like the Apple Store have become a channel for products that are better than what people were used to. I mean, I know that if I ask people who outside the industry what's hi-fi, they'll say Bose. So clearing that hurdle is a big one. Apple Store is selling higher and higher end products, and that's a channel that people trust. They're there buying their phone and their computer and their tablet, and hey, what's this fancy looking thing? And it does sound better. So the thing is, there's very little channel like that. There's hi-fi stores are not high street. They're not very accessible. We know where they all are, but the general public does not. They don't even know they exist, I think, in many cases. So I think getting people into the sort of a baseline, whether it's a decent pair of headphones or an all-in-one tabletop, it's just something better than what they have is the challenge.
I think that gap is being shortened or whatever. Like there are more and more companies which are coming into play, which are affordable and which people know, oh, this is better than the crappy Bluetooth speaker I've got or whatever. And I hear that from my friends and stuff. They're investing a little bit more money in something they've heard, oh, it sounds really good. And so I think it's coming slowly. But yeah, it's still a big gap.
Congratulations to Enno. That was 51 minutes before anyone said Bose. So, David.
Yeah, I mean, as Enno says, it's a big challenge for us is that there isn't a hi-fi store on the high street anymore. And because we're at the high end and we design and make our stuff in the UK, it's expensive. And we rely on people who've traded up, started with maybe a smaller system and eventually they get to a dCS front end and sometimes speakers this size in the front room. So the challenge for us is to make sure that there's people coming through. And for me, the baseline was always Sonos. That was what everyone knows. It's really easy to use. You can put them in every room in your house. But then even recently, you've got, Amazon have come out with their little voice-activated speaker. Now, they're giving that thing away so that you buy more toilet roll on Amazon, not so that you can play music. So the danger is that and devices like that take the quality back a step again. So it's a constant battle to get people to appreciate good sound, and if you can get them on the ladder and they enjoy what they're hearing, then I hope that eventually they become a dCS user.
I think there's definitely a sense that if people get access to high quality sound, they can easily hear the difference. I think the problem is actually getting that to the general public, isn't it? And that's always been the case. And obviously with things like HDTV, you just go down to Curry's or whatever and you can see the difference, but there's no real equivalent for hi-fi, and that's obviously a problem for us.
Is wives who won't let a chap have decent speakers.
They won't even let you have wires. That's the real problem. I don't know how many of you have done listening tests on Bluetooth or DAB.
It's got much better.
Well, the real problem with Bluetooth, because so many days a month I do listening tests at a lab up in Huntingdon. And with Bluetooth, we're finding one single wire maybe going to the left speaker, and then it Bluetooths to the right-hand one with a rather inconvenient half-a-second delay. And then you have a subwoofer, which has another half-second delay. And we're not talking sort of Martin Collins timing issues here. We're talking gross errors where you've got a subwoofer that's half a second or a second behind, which is a problem. It would be rather nice if a revised Bluetooth came out fairly soon that didn't have quite so much latency.
Doesn't that line comment highlight the problem that the industry's got?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
This is a geeky industry, people like geeky equipment, and it has to change.
Yeah.
The hi-fi equipment dCS sells, and the branching to sell, there's got to be an item that's desirable for the wife in those as well. It represents something that's stylish and attractive and complements the rest of the equipment space. Shout out to all the female audiophiles out there who has got the reverse, and their husbands won't let them get good hi-fi equipment as well.
Paul, do you have any thoughts on that?
What would I say? I mean, a lot of this is, as with a lot of the acquired tastes in life, it's there when you're ready for it. So when you're 18 and you have a single malt and you're kind of used to Ribena, it's disgusting. And then you hit an age, and it's the same with Rachmaninoff and Henry James and all the good things you have to grow into. The reality is the equipment we're talking about and sort of the equipment we have here is not, it's the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. It's not for everyone. If someone said, I'm looking to get into this and where do I start? We sell a pair of headphones which have a built-in DAC. You can plug that into your iPhone. You've got a Tidal account. That's a mega upgrade on, pretty much anything that's going on now. The reality is most people don't care. They just want to hear the music. They're not, we are all on a audio journey of discovery to sort of get to the end, the ultimate listening experience. And for most people, that's not where they're coming from. They're just listening to it as part of the, as part of their lives. There's also a bigger, when we talk about streaming, it needs to be seen in the context of this accelerated society where Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, there's an instant, impatient culture around us, which this mode of listening to is an antidote to. But you're not going to hit it till you've got a few miles on the clock. And also, just to sort of get back to the wife acceptance comments, my wife is a kind of massive music nut, and when I had my, I've been sort of buying and collecting equipment and in the sort of, middle range. And then I went to Munich and heard Living Voice and kind of came home and sold a kidney and a couple of kids and bought some Living Voice speakers. And that's kind of, it's not all we do in the evenings because we also watch loads of TV, but it's, I think it's a tricky thing to start saying this is just a man hobby. There's tons of women I know. There's tons of female DJs here who are kind of as big a music nuts as anyone in this room. So
I would add to that. That's kind of an internal mantra we have, is trying to move out of the listening room and into the living room. So I think the listening room was always the domain of one kind of guy sat in his own, listening to the same 10 CDs over and over again. And that's what we need to shift.
Yeah, there's definitely a tradition of hi-fi manufacturers making incredibly ugly products, isn't there? That's great. So thank you very much. It's been a really interesting discussion, I think, and maybe the conversation will continue off microphone later as well. But thank you very much. A round of applause for our panel, please.